Okay, assalamu alaikum and welcome to this live. Okay, guys, so today what I want to share are some thoughts on how I believe the Trinity resulted in atheism, the atheism that we see in the world today. Now, this was something I was thinking about, especially after the live stream that I did with Dr. Steph last week. And if you guys haven't watched it already, definitely go and check that out. It was such an educational live stream, especially for me as well. The stuff that Dr. Steph mentioned and he went into and discussed, and the sort of nuanced perspectives on certain aspects of European history and what actually led to the sort of secular atheist world that we're a part of today. Very interesting live stream. It's on my channel. Definitely check that out, guys. But one of the things that I took from that discussion, and something I was thinking about earlier as well, was how the Trinity, the concept of the Trinity that Christians believe, led to atheism. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, if you go back in history, if you go back to the time prior to the Enlightenment, if you go back, say, to the 15th century, 16th century, what you would see is the Christian theologians at the time were trying to reconcile reason and revelation. They were trying to find that sweet spot, that balance between these two realms, of these two worlds. And this was obviously something that was brought to the limelight because of the Muslim world as well. As I mentioned before, Thomas Aquinas was one of those examples, those individuals that had seen how Islam had reconciled reason and revelation, and the beautiful amalgamation that Islam presented between the human intellect and its use and its role and revelation. So what he tried to do was try to also bridge the gap, but he was unsuccessful. And the reason he was unsuccessful, or one of the main reasons he was unsuccessful in doing so, was because of the concept of the Trinity. The concept of the Trinity went against reason, went against rationality. And that's the most fundamental tenet of Christianity. It's their theology. And therefore, if you can't reconcile that with reason, then there's no space for reason in Christianity. And that was something that, later ended up happening. You had other theologians, such as Martin Luther, a Protestant theologian who, in very clear words, referred to reason and rationality as one of the greatest enemies of, or the greatest enemy of Christianity, of religion. He referred to it as a whore, literally, right? And this showed the sort of, how averse Christianity at that time was to reason. Because it went against the whole doctrine. You just could not rationalize the Trinity. The concept of the Trinity itself, it doesn't rationally make sense, and it doesn't intuitively sit well. It doesn't make sense from any perspective. So that was a big problem. And then obviously this later led to the oppression of the free thinkers at the time, just prior to the Enlightenment, all of the persecution that took place, etc., etc. And then obviously we had the Enlightenment, where there was a shift in thinking. That humanity, or people, left the dogma of Christianity, left Christianity and moved towards reason and rationality. But what was very interesting was that these early thinkers in the 18th century, 17th, 18th century, they didn't let go of the belief in God. And this was what was interesting. They weren't what you would call atheists, or how we would define atheists today. They were simply individuals who acknowledged that there must be a creator. Some of the early scientists, as we know, they were people who acknowledged a creator, a God. They were what you refer to as, or what they dabbled in, was what you'd call natural theology. That's what they would refer to it as then, which was that the whole idea behind wanting to study the world and to understand the world and to understand the material physical existence and the laws present, etc., was because they believed that there was a creator. And by understanding the world around us through the sciences, they thought that they will better be able to understand the creator that was behind all of this. So there were people that believed in a creator, right? And it made sense, because intuitively it also made sense that because there's so much order in the world, there are laws, the laws of physics, etc., that govern this universe, there must be a lawgiver. And they were in search of this lawgiver. Hence, they left Christianity, but they were atheists. They were people that were looking for the creator, that ultimate source behind everything. And I really believe if, these individuals at that time had come across the true teachings of Islam, they had really got to know what Islam is. Most of them will probably have become Muslim. Just because of the intellectual, just because of the strong or the clear concept of God that is there in Islam, which is very simple and it's very intuitive and it's very rational, that there is a creator. This creator is unlike anything you can imagine. This creator is not a man. This creator is not a part of a trinity or a triune Godhead. This creator is uniquely one. He's unlike anything you can imagine. And he is the creator, the source, the eternal source of everything that exists. If they had come across this clear conception of God that's present in Islam, that Islam teaches, I'm sure many of them would have become Muslim, or at least would have had a positive outlook on Islam. A perfect example of this is Voltaire. When he obviously originally came across Islam in the 1700s, he was averse to Islam. He disliked the Prophet, peace be upon him. He disliked the teachings of Islam based on what he had read, based on the early translations that were available at the time. And obviously these were coming from Christians, so it's almost like they didn't find, they couldn't keep people with Christian, or they couldn't keep people or get people to hold on to Christianity, but they didn't want people to hold on to Islam or look at Islam either, right? So they were doing the early translations of the Quran, etc. So when people like Voltaire read these early translations, which were misrepresenting what Islam really is, they were terrible translations with an agenda, they disliked Islam. Voltaire even made plays against the Prophet, peace be upon him, portraying him in a very negative light. But then later on, when he himself read a better or clearer translation of the Quran, I think it was by Sells, I'm not sure who it was by, I don't remember completely, but when he did, he actually started defending Islam. He actually started to defend Islam. And this sort of highlights, if those people at the time, those that were searching for God, the creator behind this entire existence, if they had come across the true message of Islam, they probably would have become Muslim, or at least favored Islam or spoke highly of Islam, as did Voltaire. So we get to the Enlightenment, people are averse to Christianity, they're turning away from it, they're rebelling against it now because of all the persecution and all of this, these anti-rational doctrines that were being promoted and pushed, the concepts of God that were being pushed, which are not only against rationality, but against human intuition, the fitrah. And then you had the Enlightenment, which now the focus of humanity became the material world. Fast forward, a few hundred years, and now obviously because we live in a world which is focused on the material, there's obviously no room for God anymore. Religion has all been put into one basket along with Christianity. Therefore, when people think of Islam, they think of similar things as to Christianity and the history of Christianity. And this is really sad because people haven't been able to really get to know what Islam is. And therefore, we live in a world now where atheism is, I'm not saying it's the mainstream, but it holds whatever position it holds, because atheism, as I've said already, is in line with this sort of modern outlook of humanity, or this postmodern, if you like now, especially in the times we live in, postmodern outlook of humanity. It's just in line. It's the hat that fits the head best, not because it's rational or it makes sense or it's intuitive, etc. It's just because it fits well. It just fits well. But however, there are people now that are realizing atheism itself, the very, thing which almost is a reactionary byproduct to this history. Atheism itself is not fulfilling humanity. Atheism itself is averse to the fitrah, the nature of the human being. And therefore, people are now starting to look for alternatives. And this is why I really encourage people to look into Islam and study Islam. If you're an atheist, you come originally from a Christian background, you're an agnostic, look at what Islam has to say. And I guarantee you, if you really take a sincere look at Islam and you read the source text, you read the Quran, you study it sincerely and honestly and objectively, you would see that firstly, the concept of God in Islam is intuitive, it's rational, it makes sense. It will confirm what you already sort of deep down recognize about the Creator. That He's one, He's uniquely one, there's nothing like Him. He's the creator of everything that exists, etc. So that's the first thing. Secondly, when you read and study Islam, what you would see is that it provides answers to those most fundamental questions that we have as human beings, which atheism can't provide answers to. It cannot answer the question of the meaning of life. It cannot answer the question as to what's the purpose of my existence. Atheism leads to nihilism, existential nihilism. It leads to meaninglessness. Again, something which is very averse to human nature, because deep down we are creatures that are driven by meaning. We are searching for meaning. We're searching for the answers to, the purpose of life, etc. And atheism is not going to give it to you. So I really encourage people to look into Islam and really understand that just because there is a history that where Christianity was against reason, against rationality, against free thinking, against science, it doesn't mean Islam was the same. It doesn't mean that. When you look at the history of Islam, especially when this was going on in some parts of Europe, look at the Muslim world. We had the development in the sciences. You had the golden age where people from all over the world were coming together and studying and trying to better understand the world. They were engaging in what we refer to as science today, the early sciences. They preserved the works or translated the works of the Greeks and hence preserved it and then passed it on to the rest of the world. So Islam accommodates for this. Islam is a very balanced, holistic way of life, which not only is rational, but it's intuitive. And I really encourage everyone to look into Islam from that perspective. Anyway, just wanted to share my thoughts in regards to how the Trinity led to atheism. So there is definitely a link there. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you guys. Obviously, I can't, because I'm not using the stream program that I normally use for streaming. Your questions are very small, but please leave your questions in the comment section below and I'll address those to the best of my ability. I thank you guys for listening to this live now, but which will be a recorded video in a few moments. May God bless you, and I will speak to you next time. Assalamu alaikum.